$1 million in February 2020, 0 in November 2022, 34 months, 5 calls, not one of them stupid. That's the case I'm gonna walk through today. A specific transfer, a specific person, a specific 34-month trajectory. By the end of this video, you'll see how 5 reasonable choices made in sequence by a competent adult average to 0, and you'll see why the wealth management industry sees these clients only in month 20 when there's nothing left to manage. What I want you to do while you watch is hold this question in the back of your head. Which of the 5 calls would you have made the same? Be honest about it. Most viewers watching locate themselves inside 3 of the 5, some inside all 5. The case isn't a parable about somebody else. The case is a probability statement about most people who receive a large transfer with no decision architecture installed in advance. The Williams Group looked at 3,250 families across multiple generations. Their long-term observation became the most cited number in the wealth transfer literature. 70% of intergenerational wealth fails by the end of the second generation, 90% by the third. You've probably seen the 70 on a slide somewhere. What you probably haven't seen is the mechanism that produces the 70. The press cites the number, the Williams Group named the mechanism. Today's case is the same mechanism compressed into 1 generation and 34 months. The setup. The heir is 33 years old, lives in a townhouse in suburban Philadelphia, made $82,000 a year before the inheritance. Mother passed in November 2019. Estate cleared probate in early February 2020. After the federal estate exemption, which per the IRS statistics of income is one of the largest in the world at $13.61 million per individual in 2024 and was $11.58 million in 2020, there was no federal estate tax owed. The Pennsylvania inheritance tax took 4.5% off the top for a lineal heir. The wire that hit the heir's brokerage account showed $1,180,000 and change. February 12, 2020. The heir had grown up middle class. The largest single balance he had ever seen in his own account before the wire was about $11,000. Now the number on the screen had 3 more zeros than the largest number he had ever held. He stared at it for a long time. You can probably imagine that scene, even if you haven't lived it. Most people in this conversation can. The question is what you do in the 72 hours after that wire clears. That window is where the 70% starts forming. The first call came at month 2. The heir owned the townhouse outright in his and his late mother's name with a mortgage. $300,000 left at 3.5%. He paid it off. $300,000 of the inheritance wired to the mortgage servicer, payoff letter received 17 days later. From the outside, this looks like the smartest call possible. Debt eliminated. Monthly payment of $1,900 gone. Freedom gained. Most people watching, if you're being honest, would have done the same. The script in your head is the same script that was in the heir's head. Pay off the mortgage, you'll feel better, you'll sleep better, you can't lose with no debt. Run the numbers yourself. At 3.5% fixed, that mortgage was probably the cheapest leverage a US household has held in 50 years. $300,000 left invested at a real return of 6%, which is roughly the long-term Vanguard data on a diversified portfolio, compound over 25 years to about $1.3 million. The mortgage payoff didn't save the heir $300,000. The mortgage payoff cost the heir roughly $1 million in opportunity over the next 25 years. Did the heir know that? No. He slept better the night the payoff letter arrived. The call was reasonable. If you'd inherited $1 million from your mother 2 months earlier and you had a 3.5% mortgage with $300,000 left on it, what would you have done? The honest answer for most people watching is the same thing the heir did. That's not a flaw. That's the default. The flaw is in expecting the default to be optimal in a context the default was never built for. Month 5. 2 younger siblings, one in nursing school carrying $90,000 in student loans, one going through divorce. The heir gave them $150,000 combined, $85,000 to the nurse, $65,000 to the sister. The reason, out loud, it's what mom would have wanted. That's the line you say to yourself and to anyone else who asks. And it's probably true. The mother probably would have wanted that. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, last published full cycle in 2022, shows the median inheritance among recipient households runs in the $70,000 to $100,000 range. The heir had just transferred slightly more than the median inheritance amount, out of his own inheritance, in a single weekend, with no documentation, no schedule, no tax accounting. Roll that number forward 40 years. Without structure, the gift itself didn't have to be the wrong call. The structure around the gift was the wrong call. There's a tax form, Shahrat Form 709, li'ana, that has to be filed for any gift over the annual exemption amount, which was $17,000 per recipient in 2023. No tax was owed because the heir was nowhere near his $13.6 million lifetime exemption ceiling. But the form wasn't filed. Not because the heir was avoiding it, li'ana, because nobody told him it existed. Watch how this works. There was no advisor at month 5. There was an heir, a checkbook, and an emotion, li'ana, a generous call made without any of the structure that would have made it durable. The third call came in month 11. A college friend was starting a fintech company, asked the heir for $100,000 for 8% equity. The framing, the heir told himself, I have liquid capital I didn't have 2 years ago. This is exactly the kind of opportunity I never had access to. Both of those statements are true. Neither of them is a sufficient reason to write the check. Cerulli Associates projects roughly $84 trillion in US intergenerational wealth transfer between 2024 and 2045, the Great Wealth Transfer. A meaningful share of that capital is going to find its way into seed stage equity through exactly this channel. Friend asks heir says yes, no due diligence, no portfolio theory, no expectation of failure built into the call. Standard early stage venture statistics, roughly 70% of seed stage companies return 0 or near 0, 20% return capital or slightly more, 10% return 5x or more. The math works at portfolio scale across 30 or 40 positions. The math does not work for a single check. The startup ran out of capital in month 29. The heir's 100,000 became 0. Decision 3 was understandable. Decision 3 was also in isolation statistically unsound. Then the slow one, months 6 through 28. The hardest of the 5 to see. The hardest one for you to catch in your own life if you're ever in this position. The other 4 calls have a transaction attached to them. A wire, a check, a signed agreement. The slow one has no transaction. The slow one is $2,000 a month dribbling out of your account in 80 different directions for 22 months. The heir's monthly spending lifted gradually. Better restaurants, call it $300 extra a month. A car upgrade, call it $400 extra in monthly financing on a $48,000 new car. House upgrades on the no longer mortgaged townhouse. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. A trip to Italy in summer 2021, 11,000. None of it felt expensive at the time. Each month, $2,000 to $3,000 went out the door that wouldn't have gone out the door before February 2020. Over 22 months, that's roughly $55,000 absorbed into lifestyle. By month 28, the brokerage account that started at $370,000 after calls 1, 2, and 3 was sitting at $84,000. That's the point where most people drop out. Drop out of watching, drop out of tracking, drop out of the cadence of asking, where did the count go? The heir, by all accounts, didn't track it closely either. The brokerage statement came monthly. He looked at it for the first 10 months, stopped looking somewhere around month 14. Have you ever stopped checking a financial statement because the number was harder to look at than the number used to be? You're not alone in that. The mechanism is well mapped. Hedonic adaptation has a research footprint going back to Brickman, Coates, and Janoff Bullman in the 1970s, refined more recently by Killingsworth's work on income and well-being. The mechanism is simple. The new baseline becomes the floor. The floor becomes invisible. You stop noticing what you spend. Brief stop. Before we get to the call that closed it, that's where the cadence breaks for most people. If the way this is unfolding is reading the way I think it is, the subscribe button is right there. Net sum keeps showing up in your feed when we get to the part the others stop short of. Call 5, month 29. The Heirs lifestyle baseline is now permanently higher than it was in February 2020. The local real estate market in suburban Pennsylvania is hot. The Heir buys a starter rental, a duplex about 30 minutes from his townhouse, for $420,000 with $84,000 down. His remaining liquid balance after the down payment, closing costs, and the first round of property insurance is about $3,000. The plan is to rent both units. Cash flow will cover the mortgage on the rental, maybe a few hundred a month positive. 6 months in, one tenant skips rent for 3 months and damages the unit. $22,000 in repairs and missed rent. The property taxes and insurance, Pennsylvania doesn't have Texas level property tax, but it's not Tennessee either, are running at the upper edge of what the rental income covers. The duplex is now cash flow negative. The Heir has no liquid reserves. Month 34. Bank account at 0. Credit card balance climbing. The duplex still cash flow negative. The Heir is 6 weeks from missing a mortgage payment on the rental. Write down the date. November 2022. 34 months. 5 calls. Not one of them stupid. This is where the logic turns. Where was the wealth management industry during this trajectory? It wasn't there. The advisor who could have walked through call 1 could have said, let's keep the 3.5% mortgage and put the $300,000 into a diversified portfolio, and over 25 years you'll have $1.3 million instead of a paid-off house and a smaller account. That advisor didn't get the call. The advisor who could have structured call 2 through annual gift exemptions across multiple tax years with Form 709 filings and no movement against lifetime exemption, same. The advisor who could have said, before you write a $100,000 check to your friend's seed stage company, here's what venture distributions actually look like, same. The advisor who could have flagged the slow lifestyle drift at month 15 when it would have cost the Heir $30,000 to correct instead of $200,000, same. Wealth management structurally doesn't see clients like this in February 2020. The industry sees them in November 2022. The wire to the advisor's office in month 2 would have generated a fee that the Heir didn't want to pay. A typical wealth management advisory contract runs between 50 basis points and 1% of assets under management annually, which on $1.18 million is $5,000 to $12,000 a year. To an Heir who had never seen a 5-figure annual fee on anything in his life, that fee felt insulting. He skipped it. The advisor who could have prevented the trajectory got the call at month 32 when the Heir's brother referred him. By then, there was nothing to manage. Vanguard published a working paper in 2014, sometimes restated since, that put a number on what advisor services contribute to a portfolio. About 3% annualized in total value broken across behavioral coaching, tax-efficient withdrawal sequencing, asset allocation discipline, and rebalancing. The largest line item, about 150 basis points, is behavioral coaching. The advisor's job structurally isn't to pick stocks. The advisor's job is to be the structural friction between you and the next reasonable but uncoordinated call, and that friction is priced explicitly into the engagement letter. The Heir read the engagement letter, saw the fee, and walked. Most people in your position, if you receive a transfer like this, will read the fee line and walk too. The fee that gets walked away from is the same fee that would have prevented the trajectory. This is the part I want to underline. The wealth management industry is far from blameless in this space. The AUM fee model, the product pushing incentives, the conflicts that come with commission structures, all real, all worth their own video. But the structural service the industry can provide when it's bought is real. The Williams Group 70 is not a statistic about stupid heirs. The Williams Group 70 is a statistic about the absence of decision infrastructure between receipt and deployment. Morgan Housel has written about this directly, the idea that luck and risk are siblings and that what looks like a series of personal calls in retrospect is often the geometry of structure or its absence. This case is that idea in motion. Watch how this works. Reasonable calls made in isolation, in sequence, with no structural review, average to 0. Not because the calls were bad, because there were no other calls held against them. The Williams Group 70 isn't a story about heirs making stupid choices. The 70 is a story about what happens when a number larger than any number you've ever held arrives in your account, and no structure arrives with it. $1 million in February 2020, 0 in November 2022, 34 months, 5 calls, not one of them stupid. The call that mattered wasn't the mortgage payoff or the sibling gift or the startup check or the duplex. The call that mattered was the call that wasn't made. The call to slow down, install the architecture, and let 3 months pass with the inheritance sitting in 3.5% treasuries while the framework got built. That call doesn't feel urgent, doesn't feel productive, doesn't show up on any to-do list anyone hands you, so nobody makes it. And the structural absence of that single call across 3,250 observed families is what produces the Williams Group 70. If this trajectory landed like the video, subscribe. Tell me in the comments which of the 5 calls is the one you'd have made differently, and how confidently you'd have stopped yourself when the call was actually on your desk. Net sum keeps the count going.